a quiet winter night, a cold sky, and a celebration so familiar that we rarely stop to ask how it actually began. Christmas, wrapped in lights, music, and memory, feels ancient, eternal, almost inevitable. But behind the warmth of fireplaces and the glow of decorated trees lies a story far stranger and more dramatic than most people imagine. A story of empires and rebels, pagan rituals and political maneuvering, astronomical puzzles and theological debates, forgotten gods and newly crowned ones. A story in which almost nothing is as simple as it seems. And it begins long before a child was said to have been born in Bethlehem. People have always been drawn to the winter solstice, the darkest moment of the year. A turning point when ancient civilizations watched the sun dip to its lowest arc and feared it might not return. In Northern Europe, long before the word Christmas ever existed, tribes lit fires to coax the sun back into the sky. They feasted, drank, and told stories to keep the cold from swallowing their spirits. For them, winter was a season not just of survival, but of defiance. A declaration that no matter how dark the world became, light would rise again. Yet thousands of miles away in the powerful Roman Empire, a different drama was unfolding. Rome was a titan, rich, brutal, vast, and it had its own winter festival, Saturnalia. For a week in December, Romans turned their world upside down. Gambling was allowed. Slaves and masters switched roles in symbolic rebellion. People flooded the streets with singing, feasting, gift-giving, and wild celebration. It was chaotic and joyful and completely unlike the disciplined order Rome liked to project. But it was irresistible, and year after year it grew. And then something even stranger happened. A new festival emerged in the late empire, dedicated to an Eastern mystery god rising in popularity, Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. His feast day? December 25th. A date chosen to honor the moment the sun begins its slow return, when light triumphs over darkness. It was a powerful symbol, and Rome adored powerful symbols. But the world was shifting. A small, persecuted religious movement, Christianity, was spreading across the empire. It had no winter festival of its own and celebrated no birth date for its founder. The earliest Christian writers didn't even mention the month Jesus was born, and many admitted they had no idea. Some argued the very notion of celebrating a birth was pagan and inappropriate. But others saw possibility. In a world where rival beliefs competed for followers, symbolism mattered. A question formed in the minds of early Christian thinkers. What if the story of Christ's birth could be given a moment on the calendar? A moment that meant something. And so, after centuries of debate and competing theories, December 25th gradually emerged as the chosen day. Not because anyone knew Jesus was born then, but because the date already held a deep universal resonance. The return of light, the victory of hope. A spiritual truth, if not a historical one. It was a brilliant move, and it changed the world. Yet this is only the beginning of the story. High in the snowy forests of Scandinavia, the Norse celebrated Yule, an ancient feast honoring Odin, the one-eyed wanderer god who rode across the winter sky on an 8-legged horse. He brought gifts and punishments, soaring through the darkness in midwinter. Some children left boots stuffed with straw for Odin's horse, hoping he would reward them. Over the centuries, as Christianity spread north, people didn't abandon these customs. They adapted them. Odin's supernatural winter ride would echo in later tales, whispers of a night visitor on a flying steed judging the good and the wicked. In Germany, evergreen trees symbolized eternal life long before they were draped in lights. Fire-lit trees stood in the night as reminders that even in winter's death, something lived. These evergreens would become one of Christmas's most recognizable symbols, though their origins were older, wilder, and deeply pagan. But the Christian holiday and the old winter rites existed side by side for centuries, blending, merging, sometimes battling. In some places, the church resisted these customs as stubborn remnants of pagan worship. In others, it embraced them as useful tools of conversion. Over time, the two streams became inseparable. Then, during the Middle Ages, Christmas exploded into a festival of extremes. In cathedral naves, priests chanted solemn hymns about a miraculous birth. Outside, in the frost-covered streets, revelers drank until morning, demanded food and drink from wealthy households, and crowned the Lord of Misrule, a temporary ruler chosen from the common people, empowered to preside over games, mockery, and mischief. In many towns, it was a season of generosity and chaos, devotion and debauchery. Christmas was both holy day and carnival, with no clear line between the two. Yet while Europe kept its noisy winter traditions, one man on a distant island quietly reshaped Christmas more than almost anyone in history. In the 1800s, a professor named Clement Clarke Moore wrote a poem that began with the line, "'Twas the night before Christmas." It was intended only as a gift for his children. But little did he know he had just rewritten centuries of folklore. Moore described a cheerful miniature man in a sleigh pulled by 8 reindeer sneaking into homes with a bag of toys. The figure bore little resemblance to the earlier depictions of St. Nicholas, the strict Christian bishop known for giving secret gifts to the poor. Moore's Santa was short, merry, round, almost elfish. The poem spread rapidly, charming generations of children and parents. And then another transformation happened. In the late 19th century, a political cartoonist named Thomas Nast illustrated Santa in red robes, with a broad belt, a great beard, and a belly that shook like jelly. Nast's images fixed Santa's look in the public imagination. By the time the 20th century arrived, Santa had become a global icon. Coca-Cola ads later reinforced the image so powerfully that many people still believe the company invented him. They didn't, but they did help cement him as a central figure of modern Christmas. But behind the jolly exterior lies a darker strand of history. In Eastern Europe, a figure named Krampus roamed the winter nights alongside St. Nicholas. Horned, monstrous, and wielding branches, he punished those who misbehaved. His origins reached deep into pre-Christian folklore, a reminder that winter myths were never purely benevolent. Even today, the echoes of these traditions linger in rituals, festivals, and stories, blending fear and wonder. And what of the story at the heart of Christmas, the birth of Jesus? Historically, it is more complicated than the peaceful nativity scenes suggest. The earliest gospel writers never imagined the holiday that would one day surround the narrative. And details vary. A census that historians cannot locate, a star whose behavior does not match any known astronomical event, wise men whose number is never actually given in the text. Yet the meaning behind these stories carried power. They framed Jesus not as a distant philosopher, but as a vulnerable newborn, a symbol of hope entering a difficult world, an image much easier for ordinary people to connect with than abstract theology. Over centuries, sermons, songs, paintings, and rituals built layer upon layer of meaning around that birth. The Christ child became the center of a winter season that was once more about survival and light than religion. And though the historical details remain debated, the emotional truth resonated across cultures. Still, Christmas would face one of its greatest challenges, not from pagans or skeptics, but from Christians themselves. In 17th century England, the Puritans viewed Christmas as a sinful celebration soaked in drunkenness and paganism. They banned it entirely. Shops were ordered to remain open on December 25th as a test of loyalty. Soldiers patrolled the streets, searching for illicit feasts. In Massachusetts, anyone caught celebrating could be fined. For a brief, strange moment, Christmas nearly disappeared from the English-speaking world. But people do not easily surrender their midwinter hope. When the Puritans' political influence faded, Christmas returned, slowly at first, then with growing strength. By the Victorian era, it was transformed once again. A man named Charles Dickens played a vital role. His story, A Christmas Carol, written in 1843, captured the essence of the season: generosity, redemption, and compassion. Dickens portrayed Christmas as a time when society paused to remember its neglected members. His tale spread quickly, shaping not only literature, but the very meaning of the holiday. It was no longer just a religious feast or a festival of excess. It became a moral moment, a reminder that kindness mattered. Traditions layered upon traditions. German Christmas trees blended with British customs. American Santa legends merged with European folklore. Ancient pagan practices quietly persisted beneath a Christian narrative. And woven through it all was the universal human need to push back the darkness with light. Today, Christmas is celebrated by billions, Christians and non-Christians alike. Some observe it as a sacred holy day, others as a cultural tradition, a family gathering, a winter ritual of lights and music. Some cherish its spiritual depth, others embrace its warmth and nostalgia. It is at once deeply personal and universally shared. Yet its story, its real story, is not a straight line, but a tapestry. Threads from ancient solstice fires, threads from Roman festivals, threads from Norse myths and medieval revelries and Victorian sentimentality, threads from long-forgotten beliefs and modern reinventions. Christmas is not one tradition. It is thousands, carried across continents and centuries, adapting, evolving, surviving. And perhaps that is why it endures. Because at its core, beneath the complex history and cultural clashes and myth-making, Christmas speaks to something timeless. The human longing for light in the darkness, for hope in hard times, for generosity amid struggle. It is a reminder that even in the coldest season, warmth can be created, that even in the longest night, something new can begin. The real story of Christmas is not a single tale. It is a mosaic of humanity itself, its fears, its dreams, its creativity, its resilience. And every year, when the world grows dim and winter settles in, we gather again around our trees, our tables, our traditions, adding one more chapter to a story thousands of years in the making.